Hey, my name is Antoinette Legnini. I'm an artist, and you're watching Bronx Vignettes. Answer one question. I'm from Morris Park, living here for like 20 years. I would say that I still don't really feel like I'm a part of the Bronx art scene, which sounds kind of nuts. You know, we definitely have our spaces here. I feel like I've worked more with like local groups and like organizations and small venues rather than like any art gallery. So that's why I kind of feel like I'm on the outside of like the Bronx art scene, I guess. I don't know. I see a lot of new places popping up, which, you know, just like makes me pause and just question like, hey, who are you? And like, what are you doing here? I think that we unfortunately have to do that now at this point in time, especially in the Bronx. Of course, like while I'm eager for like any space that like is catering to like the arts and to artists, I just have to ask like, what are your intentions and who are you? What are you doing here? And what can you give to my community that's like lasting and positive and impactful? So Bronx Faces started right as I graduated from Fordham University. I grew up not being super proud to come from the Bronx. It was always like, at least like among my friends and like this narrative in school. I went to school in Manhattan, like all over. So there's this narrative of like the Bronx is like this terrible place. You need to get out. It's not any place to celebrate, I guess. So I kind of had this ingrained in me growing up and wasn't the first to like admit that I was from the Bronx, like especially like when I was like in school in Manhattan or something. And then when I went to Fordham and I was like one of very few people from the Bronx, I kind of found this, I rediscovered this like newfound Bronx pride. Like, no, I am proud to come here. I am proud to come from here. And this place molded me. And like, this made me who I am. Like so much of me is from the Bronx, is directly related to growing up here. And, you know, I would get a little frustrated with like either students on campus or just like with the administration and like with our relationship with like the neighborhood, with the Arthur Avenue neighborhood. And I realized I had to humble myself like as I graduated, and I was like, well, you know what, like you're saying to all these different administrators or students that they need to love and respect and learn from the Bronx, but maybe you should do the same. You know, it can't hurt for you to do the same. What do you know about the Bronx outside of like Arthur Avenue, Morris Park, like the neighborhoods that you grew up in? So it started with me asking one of my friends who's from Gun Hill. I was like, you know, I want to learn more about Gun Hill. Like, what's your favorite food spot? Or like, what's your favorite food spot in the Bronx, period? Like, I want to explore. I want to get to know the Bronx through food, you know, because that's like a great way to get to know an area and like different cultures. We're so diverse here. And, you know, then I asked a couple more friends who are in different neighborhoods as well. And then I put the call out online because I was thinking, you know, I can benefit. Everyone can give me something. I can learn a lot from everyone. And then I added, I think, like 5 more questions. Instead of like, what's your favorite food spot? I was like, what stands out the most from you, like growing up in the Bronx? What do you want me to know about your specific neighborhood or about the Bronx in general? So it was a real humbling moment for me to say like, oh yeah, you're from here, but like you can learn too, you know? And even after like, you know, reading everyone's submissions, I still don't even feel like I'm an authority. I still have so much to learn from everyone, and that's been nice. And then going off of this idea of like Bronxites controlling our narrative, like that's exactly it. It's like we are writing our own histories through like an unfiltered tongue, and that's so important for me. I don't edit any of the responses. If anything, I may say like, hey, can I combine like 2 of your answers because I can't pick one. Like I love them both. I've never had to. I've never gone in and like made edits myself. Like I refuse to do that. I will never do that. I let people speak the way that they want to speak, use whatever language they want. I may have to, you know, bleep out like certain language, but I still allow it to be present like in the response. That's just been really important for me to like us taking control of like our narratives, our histories, and like providing the proper context to, all right, why might some people want to leave the Bronx? Like, let's dive into that. Like, why? You know, like, let's not just project this story or this view, which is why every Bronx face is titled with the person's name, the year that they were born, and their neighborhood, to just provide like a little more of a context to their response. It went from me just trying to learn more about my home to this like big storytelling project, which I really love, and I feel like really honored that people are trusting me like with their stories and like their faces, you know. I think once you put the story and the portraits together, it kind of forces you to like reconsider and take a deeper look, and I don't know, you want to go deeper with this project. So I guess growing up, the people who have kind of, you know, nudged into like, oh, you shouldn't want to be from here. I feel like I heard it from all over. I feel like I heard it from friends growing up, like, oh, you got to get out. And get out is like a big phrase I would hear my friends say. Like, you got to get out of the Bronx. I heard it from teachers, like when I was a student. I'll never forget this. Like, and I mention it a lot because you know what? Like, yo, I gotta call you out, man. I won't say the teacher's name, but I was like one of 2 or 3 kids in my honors English class in high school, and he talked about teaching like the animals in the Bronx, like without realizing that like there are students like in his class who are like, that's their home, and even if there weren't, you shouldn't be speaking about you know, about a place like that. Like, it's just not professional, and it's just totally messed up. And again, it's like you don't have any context as to what you're talking about. Like, you're just some random white guy teacher who like isn't from the Bronx and like thinking that you're gonna like, I don't know, problem. Annoying. So that just kind of fed the narrative of like, you shouldn't be from here. And then like hearing it from my friends, like I feel like news would only highlight, you know, just the worst horror stories of like events or like different acts of like violence that are happening in the Bronx, which like happen, like things happen all across New York City, and like you know, this place is not perfect, and I'm not trying to paint it in that way, but what I am trying to highlight is that the people in this borough deserve to be heard and cared for, and deserve to be safe and loved, and you know, just held to like the highest standards and like prioritized, you know. Like, I feel like we've been called the forgotten borough like so much. That makes me so sad, and it saddens me that, you know, I agreed with this for so long, or not that I agreed with it, I didn't ask, well, why are we saying this, and you know, what can we do to kind of reverse that, or like, why can't we control our like own histories, our own destinies? It encouraged me to kind of just get involved with my community, or like at least like reach out and try. And I'm not perfect, I'm not like always out here, I do what I can, but I don't know, like with this project, like, the more that I learned, like, it's so crazy how I feel like Instagram has connected me to so many different people, like in like the Bronx art scene, the Bronx like activist scene, and what I've learned is there are so many fierce, intelligent, beautiful, like loving people here, And like deeply frustrated people as well. I'm just happy that this project has like connected me to so many different people who really care about like their community and care about our collective well-being, like not just their own come up or whatever, you know. We have good people here and people who care and want to look out for one another. Oh, you should get out, you should get out. But we're all kind of looking at each other now and saying, no, like we got each other, like we got each other's backs, you know, which is nice. Something as simple as like, because Bronx Faces is very specific, but with any of my work, I guess this could happen with Bronx Faces as well. Any painting, any like original work of art, a lot of it starts like, so much of it just started like as I'm falling asleep or like I can't sleep at night, and I'll wake up and like not wake up but I'll like jump up from bed, and like I feel like part of my process is like that like half like woozy walking out of bed, like stubbing my toe looking for my sketchbook and then like doing a sketch at like 3 a.m. That's how a couple of my anatomy pieces have been started, actually. 3 a.m. doodles that I just became obsessed with, and I was like, I have to do this, and I started at like 7 a.m. the next day. That was just one of them, but it's just this like constant obsession of like, oh, what can I do with this? Like, what can I do with that? And it's not like I don't run out of fuel for it. It's just, it's like this never ending pool of inspiration. Like, ooh, that's fun. And I think that's the beauty of like we were saying, like working on so many different projects at once. It's like all different parts of your brain are being utilized, and you got this. And I guess like once I have the idea and once I like have the sketch, like that initial sketch, my process lately has been like I post up by my easel and I'll get like my coffee, like my big jug of coffee next to me, my mug to not mix it like with my paint water or anything, and I'm serious. Yeah, it happens.
Have you ever actually almost like
I've like reached for it and I'm like so
in the morning.
It's, yeah, you gotta like keep them separated. But what I've been doing now to like kind of fuel like the creative juices is I've been like listening, and I wasn't either listening to like music videos or like watching biographies or interviews of people who I like draw inspiration from, which has been fun. And then it's like, oh, they're killing it, they're great, like I gotta do that too, and as I'm creating, and it's nice. And then, you know, sometimes it gets lonely, like painting alone, and when you're not in like a shared studio space, which I miss. I used to have that. So the accompaniment of like this creative who I love and respect, like listening to their process and like listening to their thoughts, like during like their interview or like their bio, is nice. I feel like that is such a big part of my process as well. Or like I can look at, this is weird, this is like a weird thing, I don't know if I've ever shared this, but if I'm like sometimes I like watch TV shows as well, like just mindless or like Planet Earth, something like that. I can like look at certain parts of my painting and remember like what I was listening to at that moment, and like so like I can look around and like have this whole like weird symphony of like different sounds or like phrases, like, oh, I remember that part, I remember this, real weird. That I didn't even realize happens. Yeah, when I paint or when I create something, I have very distinct memories of like, oh, I was doing this at that time. And depending on like what I was listening to or what I was watching, I've been asked like if that has any effect on like the painting, and like I'm not sure, because I listen to like so many different things. Like sometimes I'll watch like true crime when doing a Bronx face, and it's like, oof, that can be heavy. So I don't know if it does, or that would be an interesting little project, like seeing if like listing what I was watching or listening to for each piece and seeing if you can like see any kind of like residual like effects of like that thing. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. I'm gonna end every question with I don't know, man. I don't know, I'm babbling. Yeah.
How does obsession help you?
That is it. Like I'm obsessed with my work, and I'm obsessed with making, and I'm obsessed with creating, and yeah, it's like so I mentioned before, like it's not tiring. It's not like I'm just obsessed. It's like it's my life. I there's nothing else. Like you don't question it, I guess. And yeah, that's the fuel. It's like just being completely and totally in love with what you're doing. And you can like be in love and like frustrated. It's not like I'm totally happy as I'm like creating all the time. 90% of the time I'm like really, really frustrated. And if you talk to like any of like my old residents at like con artists, maybe in like the Lower East Side, and if you ask them like my process, like as I'm creating, they'll tell you that like 9 times out of 10, if they come up to me, I'm like, I'm gonna throw this out. I'm gonna like rip it up. I'm gonna start over. Like they'll all tell you that, and I'm like frustrated with my work until like that like moment clicks, and then I get happy. But still like in love, still obsessed like the entire time, like the entire process. There's nothing like it, which is cool. And I'm like, I feel really lucky that I have this. Like I have like this kind of obsession and like serious love for like my work. Like I don't know what life would be like without it, I guess. I feel very lucky. So the whole like mixed media, like recycled materials, repurposed objects thing started actually in like one of my last art classes ever in college. And you know, I've been an art student since high school, so I've been an art major since high school rather. And it was a rough semester. I didn't have a lot of money. Bills were rough. So when it came to my my supplies list for class, there was like one thing that was like $70 for like a watercolor pad, like Arch's watercolor pad, which is beautiful. If Arch just wants to sponsor me, let's go. But like, I'm not throwing shade at them. But you know, it was an expensive list, and like I couldn't afford everything on the list. So basically, like we would have a project, and like she would say to do it on like a certain kind of paper, or like whatever. I would try to like get away with it and do it on like cheaper quality material. And my professor like immediately was like, "What's good? Like, no, you can't do this. It needs to be on this paper." And I was really frustrated because I was like, I had to let her know like, hey, like I'm kind of struggling right now. Like I can't afford it. I can afford to do it on like crappy computer paper right now. So I won't ever forget this, like, 'cause this is how Bronx Faces started. And she was like, there's nothing wrong with you doing it on like cheaper quality material. I don't have that issue. It's just you need to make it purposeful. So if you want to do this on like cheaper quality crappy paper, like you can just like be purposeful, be a little more elegant in like your reasoning for doing that. And that just like really blew my mind, and I ran with that, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. So that kind of forced me, you know, and you know, my circumstances at that time kind of pushed me to reconsider all of the materials that I had available to me, like that were in my house. Like I started reusing watercolor sets that I've had since like the 4th grade, you know, that aren't like the highest quality, but it's like, hey, I have them and I'm gonna create beautiful work with them. And I just ran with it from there. I'm like, oh, like it forced me to look at the world around me and look at the materials that I already have and say like, how can I reuse this? And it really forces you to get creative. And that's what I really like about the mixed media portraits, is they're just limitless possibilities as to what you can do and what you can use, which is really fun. I've had a blast doing it. So since I'm 30 out of 100 portraits deep right now for Bronx Faces, like admittedly, like it can get a little repetitive with like just doing like, oh, painted face or collage materials for the rest of the accessories or features. Not so much, because I switch up what I use on people's faces. Like I can do a portrait with oil paint, acrylic paint, watercolor, Crayola crayons, again, that I've had since like I've been 10, just to kind of prove the point of like, I can use whatever quality materials and still make an absolutely gorgeous piece, and I'm gonna like constantly switch it up so that you can't even tell, you know? And you can't tell which materials are cheaper and which ones are higher quality. Like I use them all now. And it's fun, and it's a challenge in itself to do that. And but getting back to it being like getting a little mundane, or like that fear. So it hasn't yet, but like the fear of it getting mundane has forced me to switch it up even more. So there was one portrait, and I like really went out a limb with this one, and I really like it now. Edgar, I had the idea of like doing the inverse of having his face be like repurposed in collage and the rest of his features be painted. So kind of flipping, like inverting a typical Bronx face. And it didn't turn out the way I planned, but that was fine too, you know? And that's almost the beauty of like having so many portraits to do, is like I take them all very seriously and I take my time with all of them, and they all have so much care and detail put into them. But I'm also using Bronx faces as an opportunity to like really experiment and go as hard as I can and like push the boundary and not worry so much about things being perfect, because like they shouldn't be, you know. I'm working with recycled, repurposed materials. Like they should be a little like rough around the edges, a little gritty, and like I think Bronx people are also like, you know, rough around the edges and gritty, and like that's the beauty of us too, you know. It's cool. It gives me wiggle room, and it allows me to like really have fun. And I've noticed like when I'm not having fun with a portrait, it looks terrible. Like with that one that I just mentioned with Edgar's, I was really frustrated with his for a while, and it just wasn't turning out the way I planned it. I was like too focused on it looking perfect, and like, oh, like this isn't coming out the way I envisioned. And I've learned through Bronx Faces to kind of let go of like planning everything out and just kind of letting things unfold as they happen, and letting accidents happen and going with it.
What is like the best teacher?
Rejection and failure, honestly. And I lump them together just because I've had a lot of experience with both, which is fine, you know. And I used to take it really personally, like getting rejection letters or whatever it was, or failing at a certain thing. I guess I'll focus on rejection though, because I associate rejection with failure, and it's not. It's part of the world. Like you have to be ready for it. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen to you whether you were at the top of your game or whether you're just starting out. So it helps you like reaffirm like what you're doing, why you're doing it, and also it leaves you open to critique. It's like, okay, well, I was rejected. Anytime I'm rejected from something now, I request feedback if possible, which is nice, which is great. And that actually taught me. One year I was rejected from something, and I ended up getting it the following year because I asked for feedback, and they gave me feedback, which was amazing, which doesn't happen a lot either. But then I got it. I was like, wow, this, and you know what? Even if I didn't get it the following year, like that would have been fine too. But it was just a nice little lesson. And then also, I guess going more on failure, I was watching an interview with like Marina Abramovic, the amazing performance artist, and I think I literally Googled one day advice for young artists. Like she was like one of the first videos that popped up, and she was talking about how the great artists are always ready to fail because they're constantly the ones who are like switching it up and like going where no one else is like willing to go, and they're willing to like put themselves out there and like fail miserably and try, and that takes like a lot of courage. It's like terrifying to do that, and I'm trying to remember that moving forward, and like you don't want to get stuck doing the same thing and like oh, this has worked for you, keep doing that. It's like that sounds horribly boring as well, you know. Like I don't want to do that. Like that as an artist as well, it's like, oh god, like I don't want to. You're an artist because you break out of that, but no one wants to fail at the same time, you know. So it's that's not fun. But getting used to it and like remembering this is a good teacher as well because of rejection and failure. I was talking to another artist friend like maybe a year ago, and we were talking about how like you need to just focus on like the long haul, and like you're in this for the long game, and a little bump in the road now, like that shouldn't send you spinning off the rails. Like one little failure, one little rejection.
What does success mean to you?
I don't know what success is. I have no idea. I you don't understand. Like, I ask myself this all the time. I'm like, what does that even look like anymore? I don't know. No. I don't think so. See, like, I don't feel like I've hit any kind of significant success, I guess. Like, I'm super grateful for all the opportunities that I've been given from, like, my community, like my local, like, news team and, you know, my local venues and libraries and my friends who show up and support me. Like, that's been great. So I feel like I've won, like, little victories in that way, which is really nice. And, like, we all have, because it's like, this isn't only me. I don't exist. Bronx Vignettes doesn't exist without everyone else. So it doesn't feel like it's, I don't know. I struggle with success a lot. And, like, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Is it something that you would only know once it's there?
Maybe. I don't know.
Some artists think that if you're able to live off of your work, that's success. If you're happy, that's success.
Exactly. It's different for everyone. Like, could be I'm paying my bills, or like I'm happy, or like I'm making enough money. And I think success, as I continue on in my career and I'm like kind of finding my balance and like just I still feel like I'm getting my feet wet with the art world, it's kind of shifting and like redefining itself and molding itself into something new. And I don't want to just, you know, live off of my art, which is great. I would love to, but I need my social life. I need my friends. I need my community. I need like love in my life. Like, I can't just exist with art. Like, it doesn't mean anything if it's just art, you know? I know some artists who, like, they only exist for their art, and that's fine. That's what works for them. But it's like figuring out what works for me. And I think that's been such a challenge as well. It's like figuring this out on your own, like what success means like for you specifically, not just for artists, but you as the artist. I was watching another YouTube video on, I think it was Patti Smith is the artist, and she was saying that don't worry about like making a lot of money, like just relax and just make excellent work, do it at your own pace, and keep your name clean, and do what you gotta do, and build yourself up at like on your own terms. Say yes to only the things that you truly believe in and truly love, which is hard for a lot of artists, you know, because we're like so starved for opportunities. It's really hard for us. But she was saying that the more you do this and the more that like you keep your name good and clean, like it becomes its own currency. And when I heard that, when I heard her say like your name becomes currency, it almost affirmed like so much for me. I was like, okay, that's why like I struggle sometimes, but you know what, like I only say yes to what I absolutely love and like what I truly believe in, and I do my damn research and I try. I mess up sometimes, you know, like I'm not perfect, but I try. That was great advice that like I had just seen in a YouTube video, you know. Worst advice? I don't care. I don't need it. I don't remember. I don't pay attention to it. Yeah. Maybe worst advice is like, oh my god, just say yes to everything. Like, take all the opportunities that you can. Like, you're an artist. Like, and I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Because not only like, are you getting yourself into things that like you're not even ready for, or like, you know, burnout is real, you know, and you can't say yes to everything. And I just don't agree with that at all. Like, I don't agree with like, you need to do everything. You need to take every opportunity given to you, because no way. Like, some people like are, you know, some people take advantage, and some people aren't looking out for your best interests, and you need to be really careful and protect your time and energy, because like that is so valuable, and like only say yes to like what you absolutely believe in, and you know, stand by. I'm really lucky. Like I have like the best support system, like period. Like no one's better than like my people, like my mother. She worries, obviously. Like she's worried for years, like, oh, like, you know, you can't get a job as an artist, or like you can, but like you're not gonna make a lot of money. Like, you know, you shouldn't major in it. You shouldn't, you know. But she's always like encouraged me to like create, and she's always like encouraged like my talent, and she calls it talent. I'm just like, I just practice. But she's the best. My brother as well, my family, period. Like I have a really great family, and not only like blood, like my chosen family. I've been thinking about that a lot, about like my chosen family, like my friends, my blood, like my community, like everyone. I have like the best friends like on the planet. They like mob out to my shows, and it's awesome, and that kind of a feeling is just so overwhelming. There's nothing like it. And my community's been great. Like the Bronx has given me back like so much love, and like it's been nice, like between like, you know, like local groups or my neighbors, the news, like whatever it is, like I've been like really grateful that the Bronx has given me love, and like I love it back. So
What is the feeling like to have your artwork, you know, in exhibits featured? What is that like?
I can't believe it. People want to see my work.
You're like,
to be honest.
Your eyes like twitched
Yeah,
a
Twitch,
little bit.
yeah. That's me. Every exhibit, I'm like, you want to see my stuff? Like, really? Yeah, it's wild to me. It's like, and when people, it's so funny, like, when I'm showing work, I'll have someone come up to me and say, like, hey, can I, like, ask you something about this piece? And I'm like, you want to hear me talk about this thing? Like, really? You know? Of course I want to talk about it. It's nuts. It's like, this is, you're seeing part of me. Like, you're seeing so much of my, like, I poured so much of myself into it to be, like, the dramatic artist, whatever. I pour so much of myself, like, into my work, and I spend so much time with it. They become, like, very, very personal to me. Bronx Faces is very personal, obviously. My anatomy series is almost like a visual diary. So, yeah, it's, like, very personal. And to let someone into that world is, it's, like, liberating, it's freeing. Again, I feel, like, very lucky that, like, I am in a position where, like, I can constantly just, like, empty myself out and reveal, like, parts of my soul. Maybe not as much with Bronx Faces, because it's not really, it's original work, but it's a little more structured than, like, an original, like, surrealist painting, you know? Like, they're just very different. I don't know. I feel like I'm naturally, like, an open book, and I need to share, like, my soul and, like, the deepest parts of me constantly, and, like, reflect on it and, like, get it out and create and mold with it, with that, like, raw feeling. So to share that with someone else, especially if I'm, like, really going through it, and, like, I just made a piece that's, like, deeply personal like that, and someone else may connect with it, like, that's really cool too, you know? Yeah, if anyone, beyond, like, if anyone connects with my work, that's nuts. That's just bonus, you know, that's crazy. I hope that people connect with my stuff, but I don't, at this point I stopped creating for people to connect to it, just because then I'm always creating with, like, an audience in the back of my head, and I'm like, oh, well, people like this, like, I have to create this, like, for the culture. He's like, no, like, I can't do that. I don't think any great artist does that, like, or maybe they do, I don't know. But I feel like most great artists, at least, that I've studied, they created because, like, they had to, and they had something in them that they just had to get out, and, like, when you ask them about it, they're like at a loss for words themselves, and they don't do it necessarily to like change the world, or like they don't do it for anyone else. They just do it because like it's a must. It's like, I've talked to an old professor about this. There's like a surrender that comes with art, and it's like it's like something else takes over and like animates me, and like so to create something in that state of mind, like this kind of like surrender autopilot, like this is just my soul is like taking the wheel right now, like the deepest parts of me, and like my eyes glaze over, you know, and if someone can connect with that too, that's just nuts, you know, that's crazy rewarding, but that's not the goal, and it's nice that that's not the goal, because again, that means like I'm gonna keep creating, I'm gonna keep doing what I gotta do, and if people vibe with it, cool, but if not, it's an obsession, it's a need. I surrender. Oh. Yeah, so each Bronx face takes as long as it takes as long as it needs to. They can take 1 or 2 days, they can take a month, like there's no set time. Like I will push back a show like if I need to, if I need a little more time to finish something. The most important thing to me is making sure that each Bronx face has had like the proper detail and care, and that they're not rushed, you know. Some may, you know, I may finish them a little more quickly, but that's not done with like any deadline in mind. So that goes for like any show in the future, like anything. And I'm lucky that I get that kind of control with Bronx faces, and I will say no to something if, you know, it means like diluting or tarnishing the project in any way, or like not giving it like the quality that and like level of excellence that it deserves, because everyone involved deserves that, you know, like everyone involved deserves like that level of like patience and time and care. These are like our stories, and like something like a portrait, it's so intimate, and like you're trusting me with like you, so like especially Bronx faces, like it's not only like you're trusting me with your portrait, it's like your story as well. Like I'm highlighting this part of you and like your life, and it's so worthy and should be held to like the highest standard, and it's really important to me. So yeah, short answer is there's no, like, you know, they could take as long as they need to. But then regarding like gaps in between like certain projects, I don't feel a huge gap in between certain things. I feel like there's just this like overflow of like this like creative need and creative energy that I like always have in me, and I always have. There's not enough hours in the day for like everything that I want to do. I've found myself saying that like more and more lately, which can be frustrating, but I'm like, that's a good sign, you know, that means you have a lot that you want to do, which is good. Even though I'm frustrated a lot, and I'm like, no, glad I have to do something else. So being able to bounce back, the 2 projects I guess right now that I'm doing, I'm gonna add a 3rd very soon, which will be, I have Bronx Faces, which is like my mixed media realism, mixed media style portraits. I also have my anatomy series that's like anatomical surrealism, which I was saying before, like the anatomy pieces, they're so like tender and soft and a little dark, like to some people, but it's almost like my visual diary. Like I can get a little more personal with the anatomy series, but the anatomy series is only painting. I'm only doing acrylic or oil paint, and it's nice to jump back and forth between this painting visual diary and then like, you know, this kind of no rules Bronx faces. I can get as creative as I want, and there's a beautiful balance to it. Like it's like both. I have very different creative outlets for 2 projects that are so personal to me, and I don't have one style of painting either. I don't have one style of creating, so it serves both of these worlds for me. serves both of these needs that I have to create like both works. And oh, this is another piece of advice that I got from another artist, and I still don't really know how to use it. Another artist, that con artist actually, he was saying that you don't have to, but a lot of great artists use everything that they have in their arsenal in their work, like everything that they've picked up, all styles of creating, they blend it all into one thing, and that's what becomes your distinct style. So eventually it would be cool to do like, you know, mixed media and anatomical surrealism one day. But like, so that would be an example of like that kind of advice. But for now, like, it's kind of nice to have these two separate and distinct worlds and projects that I can kind of cool off on both of them when I want to, or go super hard in one of them when I'm feeling it. I do a lot of things like based on like gut too. It's like, no, I need to do this right now. Like, I gotta do this one thing. Or like, oh my God, I just got this idea. I'll like put both projects on the back burner if it means like I just got super into like this new idea. I'm very much like that. Like, just go with what you're most obsessed with at the moment. I just happen to be obsessed with like a lot of different things. So that's a little hard too, actually, is like, no, I don't get burnout. It's more like refocusing like your time and attention and energy to do a few projects or one or two projects really, really, really well, and don't start 5 at once like I want to. Or you need to wait and like dedicate the proper amount of like time and energy to certain things, and that mean certain things need to wait. And I get nervous when certain projects need to wait, because I don't want them to fall between the cracks and get lost, and then I'm not in that state of mind anymore for that project. That's happened before. And so it's like a weird kind of balance and like decision that you have to make. I was such a Kanye fan, so like that was like a clear like Pablo like reference, you know, like I feel like Pablo, like that was like in 2016 when Life of Pablo just came out, and I had just graduated and I was home, and like I just moved back home after college, so like, and then just, you know, just started to process like, whoa, like I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do with the rest of my life. So I was just like, I wanted to paint on a larger scale one day, and that seemed like the most appropriate text to put with. Yeah, like to an extent, like you need ego, like you not like need it, like I don't know. As an artist, like you need to be able to like vouch for yourself, and the world is gonna reject you and beat you down and tell you you're not good enough, and you are gonna get critiques. People are not gonna like your work. It's gonna happen. So you need to be able to build yourself up and say like, nah, my work is good, or like my work is good enough for this, or I feel strongly enough about this piece. Maybe I'm not in love with it. Maybe I have my own feelings like, oh, it's not good enough. But to the art world and like, you know, when I'm trying to present my work, nah, I'm good enough, and my work deserves to be seen, and I worked really hard on this. And it's hard. Like you need to be able to do that, and it's a very awkward thing, because like a lot of artists are used to like, you know, like I've said before in other interviews, like I like tend to hide behind my easel, and like I don't really like to like, you know, talk about my work or like do interviews at all or anything. I want my work to speak for itself, but like you need to be able to do this and like hold your own, and no one else is gonna do it for you. Like honestly, you need to be able to stand up for yourself, and it's hard. Like you just can't let it, like, you know, run wild. You can't let your ego run wild, honestly. Like, so with that balance as well, like you need to be open to critique. Take any rejections and take criticism and consider it. Don't like listen to it, but think like, okay, well, why might this person not like my stuff? Is it just like preference, like style, or could my work tighten up a little bit? You know, like, is there something that I can learn from this? But not everything's going to be a learning lesson, and some people are going to be assholes. Some people are going to be rude. Some people are going to stink, but it's okay. I try to find the lesson in everything, but some things you just can't pull from. I think you should work at your craft every day, or at least have it in mind, like don't forget about it, or at least for me, like, no, I shouldn't speak from personal experience. When I've noticed in my life, there was a point where I was like working 2 jobs and was just busy, had no time for anything, and I couldn't paint, couldn't do anything. And I felt wilted. Like that was the only way that I could describe it. When I wasn't able to create something, when I wasn't able to paint, I felt like a wilted flower almost. And I was just like upset and like depressed. And when I'm able to, and I guess that speaks to me truly, like, you know, emptying myself out into my work. And even if it's just a release, or it's something as simple as like, hey, I created something from nothing. There's something really affirming in that, even if it's like just for myself, so that can like pick me back up and bring me back to life. So for me, I need to, like, I need to. That may be different for other artists depending on like what medium you're working with, or different fields. If you're a musician, if you're a dancer, whatever it is, it's different for everyone. For me, at this point in my life, I'm not sure if that'll change in like, you know, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. But for me at this point, I need to do it. Like I said, like it's bigger than, like, I have to get it out of my body. I have to create something with it. Like I need that like soul to take over, like that pilot to take over. I need to surrender to it, and then I don't know. Didn't realize this was so hard for me to talk about. Like it's things I don't think of. I don't question this ever. It just is. Just another like annoying answer, annoying artist answer. But that's it. So.
Have you ever thought of quitting? And second part, do artists retire?
I think of quitting a lot. Not like after I said I have to do it. More like when those like, when it's like 3 a.m. and you're like just downward spiraling, listening to like all those demons, like you're not good enough, like you're terrible. I was listening to like a Jerry Saltz interview, and like he was talking about that as well, like his like demons like telling him like he's not good enough to be an artist, whatever, blah blah blah. And I really identified with that. And it happens to me. It'll happen, like a rejection can tip that off, or I can't sleep at night, and I'm like, how can I fall asleep? Oh, I'll think about all the things I'm terrible at. Or like, I'll think about reasons why I'm not good enough, and like just terrible, like, you don't need to do that. It's just when you're in one of those moods, or you just get in your own head. And I think everyone gets in their own head. So in those moments when I'm way overthinking and like really going hard at myself with like unfair critiques, and like, I'm not good enough for this. Why should I call myself an artist? Like, am I able to call myself an artist? I still kind of struggle with that, saying like, yeah, I'm an artist. It's like, am I? You know, am I good enough? I feel like an apparatus. Like, I don't feel like an artist. I feel like I just translate like these ideas, and I've just practiced a lot over the years to perfect like lighting and like general composition and everything. So I'm just the filter for all of this. I'm the filter for like ideas. So it's like, I feel silly being like, I'm an artist. It feels silly sometimes when I say it.
I think artist is just the word for what you've been saying this entire interview, which is, I need to get it out. Like, that's like art. Maybe you just add artist. I have artist syndrome.
Yeah, or like I'm the filter system for like yeah.
Get out of bed at 3 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's like the honest truth. Like I feel silly a lot of times saying that. And I've thought about like, yeah, totally like, or quitting in the sense like I could be making so much more money. You know? Right now, it's definitely a struggle, but I said the other day, which was like a really nice moment I have with myself, I was like, I feel like I am exactly where I need to be at this point in time right now, doing what I should be doing. And I'm frustrated a lot and I'm upset, but I can be frustrated and also totally loving what I'm doing at the same time. I can be both. Like they exist at the same time. And like realizing that like these contradictory feelings can exist together has been liberating. Like again, it's like this is like, you know, this is what I can be doing. I need to quiet those thoughts that are telling me, no, just quit. You know, you're not good enough. Which I think I'm gonna have that. I'm gonna have waves of that for like, you know, for life. I think just at different stages in your career and like as an artist especially, like you're gonna get hit with that and like moments of self-doubt, which brings us back to like the idea of like ego. And it's like you gotta kind of you have to build yourself up. You have to convince yourself like, no, you got this, you know, you're okay. But it's hard. What's frustrating as well is like there's no answer. There's no rule book for this. Like there's no right way to do it. So it's just a lot of trial and error too, which is frustrating, but I'm having so much fun.
And isn't there the freedom in trial and error? There's no formula.
Yeah, like there's something just exciting about it. It's like there's no safety net. Which at this, like, I want to emphasize, like, at this point in time right now, I'm able to kind of navigate the world in this way. Like, no safety net. I can experiment right now. I have the ability to. And I'm lucky. Like I said, I get frustrated, but I'm having a blast. Like, I feel like I'm right where I need to be. And I am just always inspired and, like, excited to get it out there. I don't know. I'm just enjoying myself. So, alright, you might be from the Bronx if you have that super, super distinct, particular kind of like New York grit and humor and creativity and vibrancy and passion and just, yeah, I can spot a Bronx person from like a mile away. I feel like, at least. We are such a distinct flavor of New York, and I feel like the funniest people I've ever met in my life are always from the Bronx. They're always like people that, you know, I've like grown up with, or yeah, like you can just tell the sense of humor, that creativity. There's something just so distinct and unique about us, and like we're a little weird, and I love it. Like I love that brand that we have. Like we're so distinct, in my opinion, at least. I think so. One zip code can definitely systematically give them a disadvantage. Like that's a fact. That certain areas like are just, yeah, like certain areas like with your zip code, like we are still experiencing like residual effects of like redlining and funding certain areas and not others, and like with like in school systems like education. So it definitely can, but I'm not gonna say that it absolutely does, because I don't believe that. There are definitely some areas like where there are like systematic disadvantages, like 100%. And you can definitely see that like in the Bronx, like all over the Bronx, in certain areas. Like some are just like starkly different. And that's something I like diving into in Bronx Faces as well, because it's like I ask people like, what neighborhood are you from? And like, let's look at our responses and our experiences with context, you know, and that's like a big part of it actually. Different like zip codes across the Bronx even. So it's something that I'm interested in diving into, but I don't think that it determines your destiny. But I think that it definitely affects, like, you know, it definitely can stack the odds for or against someone 100%. Like, and I think that that's a fact, you know.
Your favorite mode of transportation in the Bronx? Or at least
I hate them all. Do you see how stressed I am thinking about like the 12 bus or like the 5 train? Oh my god. I would fight the 5 train. Put that on the record. Like that's on the record. Walking. No, not walking. I don't know. I'm flustered. I'm stressed thinking about it because I'm just constantly battling with like the MTA. But yeah, like I like rarely drive, and I don't drive. Basically, I have my license. I like don't drive. So I like have to deal with the MTA. I'm on like the 2-5 line, and like, you know, buses. I hate them, but gotten used to it at this point. But like if I can walk somewhere, I'm walking. Like I'm not taking the bus. I'm not taking the train. I always prefer to just like walk there. I don't have a bike or anything. Like I should probably invest in a bike. Yeah. So that's it. Just get video of me like being flustered and like upset and screaming like with no audio. That'll be my answer. That's how I feel. Because I teach kids. I teach very, very young. I was just teaching like a toddler class, but my age range is usually like 5 to like maybe 10. My main kids though are like pre-K to first grade. So I teach the little ones. And what's really cool is like what's been really rewarding with teaching is like kind of igniting that same fire that I have in me, like with this kid. And what's so important, I'm with Spark, that's who I teach with. What's so important with Spark is that we teach like art history. We give these young students like the technical skill, but also like that deep love and appreciation for like art and the possibilities, and like building up artistic confidence is like everything. And I no matter if like any of my students, any of my like, I don't call them my students, I call them like my young artists. I'm like, oh, my young artists today. No matter if they do anything with it, if they decide to be artists or if they decide to go into other fields, like you carry that like creativity with you forever, and like that love and that like sense of wonder for like the world and possibility. When you're introduced to art at a young age or music or whatever it is. And you know, after I teach, like it makes me like reconsider, or like I have to reteach myself to be able to teach them, or to be able to translate it to the little ones in a digestible and exciting way, you know. So I'm constantly like reintroducing art history like to myself, and reintroducing or getting creative with like different projects, and like how can let's have fun. Like I want you guys to like have fun too. Get creative, but I want you to like kids are just like completely like uninhibited. Like that's something I talk to like my boss at Spark about a lot. And it's so nice to see that. And I learn from the kids too. It's like they go off, and like they do what feels right, and they go with their gut. And I love witnessing that. I love being able to, I don't feel like I'm teaching them. I feel like I'm just like leading the group, you know? So we're like, we're all doing this. We're all like showing each other. I make a point to make the kids realize that they're leaders. I like hold up their work to kids. I have them explain their work. I don't know. It's like it's a give and take. Like we all give each other something, and we learn, and like They're like 6 years old, but it's like, no, you got it. Like, I can learn something from you. My name is Annie, and thanks for watching.